Thank everyone for coming, and we want to thank everyone who is in the Zoom room and on YouTube. To thank Muma Clothing. We want to thank Tanya's Body Care. We also want to thank ECAF, and we want to thank Rhodesia Mukuhlani for her book, and Vinette for the book. So we've listed Rhodesia's and Vinette's book. You can actually go, if you click the link that you got with your ticket, you would see at the end of it, scroll down to the end, but we're going to send it out to you again, where you can buy Vinette's books and you can buy Rhodesia's book. We want to thank Muma, and there's a link to Jamil's webpage where you can go and support her. We have something for everybody, and we want to also thank Javina's Hair Care. So this is how we've decided to do it. If you want you and your little girl's hair to be done, and you're in the Tri-County area, Beds, Bucks, and Hearts, even if you're in Cambridgeshire and or Oxfordshire, you can go to Javina, so that's a part of your self-care. If you want some clothing for yourself, as a mom or the carer, you can go buy them from Muma. And then if you want something for your body, just to take care of you and little one's body as well, you can go to Tanya's Body Care. And if you want a good read for little one and for yourself, do check out Vinette's books and do check out Rhodesia's stuff. And if you want even more knowledge, you can book your first aid for mental health training or your family first aid for mental health training from ECAF. And at ECAF, what we do is we do 1-hour workshops, or we do half-day courses, 1-day courses, or 2-day courses, depending on how you want it. So thank you so much. The idea of ECAF doing this is because throughout the pandemic since last year, we started doing it just at the beginning of the first lockdown, because people started calling saying, I know you are doing something about mental health, but I'm not sure what it is, and I feel a little bit stressed right now. What is it? And so we just started to just offer that, help and support to everyone who was just looking for information. No information was clear information back then, and they needed something. So we started doing these sessions, and we've continued doing them. We've run quite a few sessions now with other partners, places like Fisher Wellbeing Service and other community groups, but we've never done anything for children in particular. And I think it's fitting. We're 19 months into the pandemic. We do need to focus on our children and need for parents and carers to understand what's happening to them. And since we have no clear end as to when the pandemic is going to end, we need to start buckling down and thinking, okay, if we weren't thinking of it before, we definitely need to be thinking about it now. So we have a panel that is just an expert panel. We couldn't have asked for a better set of women to join us. And just before I tell you about our first presenter, we just want to remind you as to what ECAF is. So ECAF is a community interest company, and they deliver training. And what they do is they deliver training to corporate or organizations, and then put a part of what they earn into supporting activities around children and families. So they give back. They make sure that they give back to all involved. And that's what ECAF is about, ensuring that we take care of children and families, because someone has to. Someone has to. So coming up is our first presenter, Trudy Mukuhlani. Trudy has an MSc in Child and Adolescent Health, Mental Health. She has an MA in Social Work. She's a Children's Social Care Manager, and she has years of experience working within children's mental health, with safeguarding child protection, supporting children and families. So she has all the knowledge that she needs to come to us to make her presentation. So we just want to welcome Trudy Mukuhlani. Welcome, Trudy.
Thank you, Trudy. That's very kind of you. Thank you. I like Trudy said, our children and also our parents and carers have had a tough time during the pandemic, and some have fallen through the net others have been able to access support. So what we want to talk about today, and also to look at I'm looking at it from a mother's perspective. I'm a mother of one. I'm also looking at it from a professional point of view, because I have seen it all, but maybe I have been lucky in my position that I'm able to see what's coming in and what we're dealing with as communities, but I'm also able to look at what's happening for my own child, which some people do not have the privilege to be able to do that. So what we're looking at is we're looking at the challenges children face or have faced and continue to face in the pandemic. And this is more to talk to all of us as parents and as carers to say, what can we do for our children? How can we support them? As a social worker myself, I know there are families that have not had great experience with social care. And some of them do not want to go out and seek support from a social worker or someone who is connected to social care. But we also need to be able to break those barriers to say support doesn't only have to come from a social worker or from social care. There are a number of places where we can go for support. But before we do that, we talk about the challenges we have faced, our children are facing. And what I have seen come through from a social worker's point of view is escalation in mental health. A number of our young people have suffered a lot of anxiety because they don't know when the pandemic is going to end. Some of them have ended up in situations where they can't get away from home. If home is not a great place for them, if home is not a protective place for them, they can't get away from that place during lockdown. So they have had to stay in that situation where they can't go and speak to a teacher, they can't go to a school nurse, there isn't that support in place. So that anxiety and that not knowing when this is going to end has led to a number of children that's self-harming. There's a lot of cutting that is going on, and it has increased. There are a number of intentional overdoses. Sometimes we are seeing, I would say, maybe very serious ones come through on a daily basis where young people are intentionally overdosing. They're taking about 40 tablets. It's all very planned, but it's not something that has started today. It's a build up from the pandemic, what they've experienced in the pandemic. And unfortunately, the support for young people has been very slow as well. So there hasn't been anything that has captured all of those people, all of the young people that are struggling, to be able to give them immediate support. So that we have now seen a number of our children, our young people, mental health escalating. There's also been a number of extreme challenging behaviors as a result of that, because some children do not know how to regulate their emotions. And all of that is now coming out as challenging behaviors, which sometimes parents are not able to manage. And you then hear a child is beyond parental control. But there is something that is triggering that behavior. And from my perspective, that has been from the anxiety, from not knowing what's happening with COVID and lockdown, and also worrying about further lockdowns, because as we're speaking today, there are children that are wondering, with the new variant that has come up, what is going to happen. So all of those anxieties are not going to go away, but we need to be able to support our young people. We've also seen in the pandemic a lot of isolation, which has increased the number of vulnerabilities for our children, where the support network is no longer there. So they are isolated. The only place or the only person that they have in the home is maybe mum and dad, maybe mum. They can't go out to their friends. They can't do anything because they are in lockdown. So they have been isolated. And again, that has had an impact on their mental health. And where relationships are difficult, like I've talked about, when there are challenging behaviors, when the relationships are difficult, those young people do not have anywhere to go because they can't go anywhere. Everywhere is locked down. And what has then happened as a result of that isolation is a higher level of vulnerability, where young people have resorted to online meeting friends, online communication, but that has also led to a lot of exploitation, be it sexual exploitation, where they have been asked to send images of themselves, to engage in appropriate behaviors. They've also been very vulnerable because even in the pandemic, the gangs are still out there. They haven't gone away. So if a young person doesn't have anyone else, they're isolated, but there's someone who is reaching out to them, they are going to go to that person because that is the only person that is available to them. So we've seen quite a number of young people, sometimes as young as 10, being involved in running drags and going missing. And all of that some of it started in the pandemic, but has now escalated because during the pandemic, that group of people was the only, social network that they had. And they can't just drop it now because they are back in school. So again, that's another thing that is happening for our young people in the lockdown. We've also seen that there has been increased numbers of domestic abuse, which children have been exposed to. So some have been caught in the middle of those fights between parents, between partners, and some have also been impacted emotionally. So there is quite a lot of things that has happened for them. Their families have, there have been parental mental health, there have been family isolation as a whole, poverty, lack and loss of support network, financial pressures, and quite a lot of things have happened for them. So what we want to see for our young people in this pandemic as it continues is how do we support them going forward. We've also seen that for some parents that have always struggled, and carers, because there are some families that are now naturally vulnerable. And for those families, they have not managed to cope. They've lost routines, boundaries. Some have even experienced loss and bereavement. So those are the things that our young people have experienced in the pandemic, and some are continuing to experience. What about parents? Because these are the parents that are still having to parent these children. They have still been impacted by the pandemic and are still being impacted by it as a whole. So because of what happened with all the isolation and everything else that's been going on, that has had an impact on the family functioning as a whole. We've seen that parental mental health has increased. Drug and alcohol abuse has also increased. Financial loss due to some people have been furloughed, others lost their jobs due to companies closing. There has been an increased child to parent abuse, where young people have started to being physical with their parents because that is their outlet, and parents have struggled to manage or to cope with that. We've also, like I said, we've also seen bereavement that parents have also experienced. So there has been quite a lot that is impacting the family and the child as a whole. But what I want to say to all of us is there is support. But what we need to start with as a parent is accepting that there is a problem, accepting that you need support. It doesn't necessarily have to be a problem, but it has to be something is not working as it should be. And I need to speak with somebody about it. If you have got children that are school age, school is the first point of contact for you as a parent. The good thing with our children is children will go to school. Most of them will go to school, and most of them will say, this is what is going on. But unfortunately, there are also some parents that tell children, or carers that say to the children, you can't say this to school. And when we say that to our children, we are saying, we have to keep things that are not working okay from people that would potentially be able to support us. But that's not what we want. We want you to come and say, I need support. And that support does not necessarily have to be a referral to children's services, because schools can open what we call an early help assessment. So we are looking at, from a low level support, what can we put in place? If schools are not sure, they can contact children's social care. The support can also come from health, midwife, nurse, the GP, community center. So there is quite a lot of people that we can approach as parents or carers to say, I think things are not working well at home. I don't want things to escalate. I need the support. Because what we want to try and do is to capture the support when things haven't gone the bad way, or things haven't escalated to a level where we think now social care may need to be involved. And what you also need to bear in mind for all of us is, when we are saying social care needs to be involved, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because we also look at what can we do to support you and work with you to ensure that you have got the right support in place. And it's consent-based. If it's at a low level, it's only when we have to say we actually don't need your consent when it's higher level. So it's all about talking and understanding that there is support. So that just for children that are within the family home. For children that are looked after, those ones are in a different situation, because they are in care with a carer or in a children's home with care providers, and there is always a package of support. But we also need to understand that those young people are vulnerable. They have already been affected by the pandemic, by being removed from the care of their parents. So there are two layers to their vulnerability. They are going to go missing, but as a foster carer or as a carer, what you need to do is continue to work with the allocated social worker, continue to work with care providers, continue to work with independent reviewing officer, because the care plan has to be reviewed quite regularly. And contact has been something that has been greatly impacted by COVID, where children had been used to, yes, every week I have to go and meet mum and dad, I have to go and meet auntie or grandma. But because of COVID, that's now been stopped. So it's also understanding that as the adults around those children to say they are already vulnerable, they need more. And if as a carer you feel you are struggling, your supervising social worker, allocated social worker, care providers, all of them will be supporting you to make sure that the young person that is in your care is being supported. And then from a professional point of view, as a professional, if you feel that a family is struggling or they need support, my advice is we need to have open and honest conversations with families. Because when we don't have open and conversations with them, and then a referral is made for support, that can have an impact on the relationship that the professional has with the person that they are working with. But we need to maintain that relationship, and we need our families, our carers, our children to continue to come to us as professionals. But that needs to be based on an honest and open relationship with them, to say, you are struggling with this is what we can do, what do you think? But what we've seen is sometimes professionals will make a referral to social care, but they haven't spoken to the family, and that has an impact on the relationship. But we need to maintain good relationships with professionals and families on the base before it even comes to social care, because that's very important. And for parents, we just want you to acknowledge the need for support. Speak to support services. If unsure, you can contact, if in the UK, you can contact your children's services and say, this is my situation, what do I need to do? And you will be directed or pointed in the right direction to make sure that things are not escalating. As social care or social services, we do not want to be involved in families' lives, but we want you to have the right support at the right time to avoid situations escalating or situations getting out of hand. So it's all about supporting you. It's all about supporting you as a family and supporting your children, our children, and the young people that we are working with. Okay, I think that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Trudy. What we're going to do is we're going to hold our questions until all of our presenters have made them. So if you are right, I have a question for you. I don't know if you saw me moving my paper. I want to get some pen and paper because it will get lost in the chat. But somebody has made a very important point before we move on in the chat, and says that great points, mental health preventative health is as important as physical preventative health. And hopefully the pandemic, the situation parents will begin to take it, a stronger initiative on caring for their children's mental health. And that's why we're having this discussion today. That's why we want to welcome those who are watching us on YouTube. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Share the link with a friend. Share it to your Facebook page so people can watch. Invite people to come into the Zoom room because I think some really important points have been shared here. So thank you so much, Trudy. We're going to ask Trudy all of our questions and ask her to give a wrap after all of the presenters have spoken. So our next presenter is Mrs. Vinette Hoffman-Jackson. She is assistant head teacher, STEM coordinator, and assessment leader. Vinette has been in education for the past 20 years, teaching in many countries. Over the years, she has held an increasing roles of responsibility, including assistant head teacher, pastoral lead, education consultant, and chair of governor. She is passionate about education, equity, and attainment. Having recently completed her postgraduate certificate in psychology, she's working with Medbex, I think, of staff in developing programs and embedding practical strategies that will help students to be more resilient and mindful of their well-being. She is a published author of 2 books. We've made available the links to purchasing her books. And she's a celebrated speaker and a BBC radio presenter. At this time, I'd like to invite Mrs. Vinette Hoffman-Jackson to talk to us.
Thank you very much, Trudy, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. I don't have a good memory as Trudy, so I'm going to opt to share my screen.
Okay, you can.
Thank you very much. Right, so this evening, thank you so much, Trudy, and the panel for inviting me to speak on protecting the vulnerable during the pandemic. And I know our focus this evening is on the children, which is quite a sensitive and a very important topic to me. I think one of the things I tell people as soon as they ask me what I do is mom has to come first, because that's my first priority. And it's seconded because I'm a teacher, and it means that I take care of the nation's children. Now, I know most people joining us this evening might have some influence on children. So even if you're not a parent, you might find that you're in an area where you can actually impact a child's life and make a positive impact as well. So I term parents, and when I say parents, I use the word quite loosely. I think anybody who's in a position of influence over a child can be regarded as a parent, does not have to be a biological parent. And one of the things I always say to teachers, especially when I'm mentoring new teachers, is that the next decision you make could determine the future of mankind. So let me put that in perspective with a little story for you. So in the early 1900s, there was this student and he wanted to become an artist. He was brilliant. He could draw, he could design, he could do everything. He applied to the School of Vienna to be an artist. And the lady that was doing the reception that day saw his application and shoved it to the side. And he was really, really disappointed that he didn't get through. But people kept saying, apply, you have the skills, you have the talent, go for it again. And the second year he applied, and as bad luck would have it, another person looked at his application, did not pay it enough attention, and shoved it to the side. The young man was so despondent. All his dreams went up. He didn't know what to do. On his way home that evening, fate would have it that he looked at a window and saw the sign, "The army needs you." He pushed his dream aside to be an artist, walked in and signed up to be a soldier. That man was Adolf Hitler. Can you imagine if somebody had made a positive decision by just accepting him to be an artist? The whole mankind, the race, history would have changed forever. So do not underestimate the decisions you make when it comes to children, because it can have very far-reaching influences. Currently, we're talking about our children. Now, when I was growing up, there were a few things I was worried about. Probably a ghost sometimes at night, probably broken friendship, and that was all my worry. Nowadays in society, kids are so worried about schools. So much is put on education, and they need to attain, and they need to achieve, and they need to meet target. We're experiencing a growing number of broken homes and broken families. Parents sometimes have to work 2, 3 jobs, and so children cannot get the support, the foundation that they need in order to progress and be good adults. Compared to that, children now have to worry about TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, drugs, and how many likes they get. Now, coupled with all of these things, this is a recipe for disaster, because children have so many things pulling them in so many different directions. So can you imagine now that we have added COVID-19, which is a pandemic? So all of these things are magnified so much, and most children are struggling to deal with them alone. When schools are open, it means that kids sometimes have a safe place. They have somewhere between 9 and 5 where teachers are in charge. Sometimes they do not have access to their mobile phone. So for those few hours of their lives, they are secure, they are protected, and they're taken care of. What we're noticing in the pandemic is a high rise of some of the things that Trudy actually mentioned before. There have been behavioral changes, mood swings. People are grappling to deal with so many things. We have children who have lost family members. We have children who are now very uncertain about what the future might hold and where they're going. We have exceptional students who, because they have lost so much time learning, now have no idea what the future holds for them. And so we're seeing quite a lot of students getting impacted more and more by the different things that are happening. Now, a few bit of statistics here. 10% of children and young people, and this is just age 5 to 16, have a clinically diagnosable mental health problem, but only 70% will get sufficient intervention. And there are various things. I noticed from the panel, there are a lot of people of my ethnic background, and we know we still have a stigma when we need mental health support. We don't put ourselves forward because we don't want to be stigmatized, we don't want to be labeled, and we don't want anybody to know that we're getting treated for mental health. Thankfully, this is actually shifting a little bit, and quite a lot of people are now recognizing that it's not only about physical health, it's not only about emotional health, but we need to make sure mental health is in place before our children can be successful or can become well-rounded adults. Now, this is usually the Bible or the go-to for most people who work with children. So even though I'm a teacher, one of the things we must understand is that teaching sometimes is on the back burner. We have to focus on creating an individual who can function in society. So the first thing we need to make sure children have, of course, is physiological needs. And this is where we need to triangulate with social services, education, and the parents, just to make sure our children are protected, our children are safe, our children are resilient and can deal with anything that life throws at them. So it means that children need basic things like a home, food, and shelter. And I might be preaching to the converted right here, but it's worthy to understand that even though I say these things and you're thinking a simple thing as a bed, there are many children that I've come across who do not even have a bed to sleep on. So you can understand coming into school and saying to me, and I saying to that child, where is your pencil, or get ready to learn? That is not on their scale of things that are important. So those are the things that we need to make sure children have. Basic things like food, shelter, sleep. They need their sleep. I, for one, very grumpy if I get up in the morning and had no sleep. So can you imagine a child coming in with the expectation that they sit quietly, be attentive, and listen to a teacher all day? So those are the things that social services and other support services usually make sure are in place for children first before we talk about anything else. Children need to feel safe. And that is not only in the home, but also in school or on their way between school and home. They need to have that assurance that they're going to be okay. And now with so many other things happening outside of school and in the transition from school to home, that some children are genuinely afraid, not only because of bullies, or in my days, I would be afraid of ghosts. They're afraid of some people who are there would harm them, or other thing would get them involved in other areas. They're also pressured by their peers to get involved in things that they normally would not even consider getting involved with, but they need to feel included. And if they're not included at home, they're going to seek inclusion somewhere else. So those safety needs need to be met from our students. Love and belonging. Simple for most people. You say, I love you, and the kids know you love them. But there are a lot of children. Recently in the UK, we had a young man who, 6 years old, was found dead because his father married a woman who just did not like him. And because of that, he was not receiving the love and attention that he deserved. So simple things like friendship groups help with kids. I know nowadays, especially in the UK, when I was growing up in Jamaica, I know I could go over to the neighbor's house and I would play with their kids. I could go to my cousins. I had brothers. I had various type of people that I could be a part of their friendship group. In the UK, you find it's quite different because, of course, it gets cold, it gets dark, and so you rush home. And for some people, home is the last place they want to be. And so kids go searching for love and belonging, and sometimes in the wrong places. With all of these, this child will have what we call self-esteem, and that means that will give them the resilience and the skills necessary for conflict resolution and dealing with cases or things that we would have not predicted, like a pandemic. Now, once all of that is happening, then and only then can you actually start teaching a child and say, this is what I need you to achieve in school, because those basics need to have been met. So Maslow hierarchy of needs is very important when we're dealing with children. They are complex individuals, complex organisms, and we need to make sure we have all of these foundations in place before we start building on anything else. So strategies for today. I always like to give people strategies. I hate to go somewhere, people talk to me, tell me what's the problem, tell me what's the issue. I walk out of the room and have no idea what's the first thing I need to do. So what I'm going to give you is a very basic strategy, or something that we use sometimes when we talk to parents, called talks. And the T there for talks stand for tell your children you care. It might seem very, very simple and very straightforward, but sometimes life gets so busy and we make the assumption that our children know that we care. They want to hear it, they want to see it, they want to feel it. So please do not underestimate the power of stopping for a few minutes to remind your children you care, and showing them also that you care. Attention. We all love a little bit of attention, even as adults. Children love attention. They love to feel needed. They love to feel wanted. They love a hug now and then. My son is 16. He pretends he doesn't like me to hug him, but secretly I know he appreciates the fact that every now and then I just throw my arms around him and say, I love you. So he'll push away and he'll do everything, but I know for the long run, he'll appreciate the fact that I'm stopping to pay attention. If he's talking to me, I make sure I switch my mobile phone off and I'm listening, I'm fully present in the moment and hearing what he has to say. I know life can be quite busy sometimes, but 5 minutes a day with a child, believe you me, it will do miracles in the long term. So switch off sometimes for 5 minutes, have a little conversation, listen to what they say, pay attention to little things. Children hardly transition overnight. There will be clues, there will be signs in their behavior, their language, how they move around the house, whether they're open with you or they're secretive, whether they start hiding, they're staying upstairs more. There are always signs. So pay attention to things that are happening with your children, because if you are not paying attention, somebody else outside will be paying attention, and it might be the wrong attention. Listen. Now, that is a skill set that a lot of people don't have. They'll hear what you're saying, but listening sometimes is very, very difficult, because listening means fully present, understanding what is being communicated and responding to what is being communicated. So if a child say to you, if you said, okay, and he said, oh, I'm fine, but you know your child and can see that that child is not fine, it means that you need to listen more. Listen not only to the words, but listen to the body language, see what is happening in the full picture before you support your child. Keep checking. Parenting, unfortunately, is one of those jobs that you have to do every single day. You can't sign off today and say, tick the box, I've done that for today, it's done, that is it. You need to keep checking to making sure your child is okay. Every day is a new thing. Every day something new is happening. We have heard about the new variant. Children might be feeling anxious about this without actually saying it to you. They might be thinking, they might be worried that another lockdown is coming, and so they won't be with their friends. They won't get to go out. They won't enjoy Christmas as they do. So every day is a new experience. So keep checking with your child to make sure they're okay. And I think Trudy actually explored this very, very well. Support your children. And you are not alone when it comes to supporting your children. I spoke about a triangle to make sure your children are okay. Utilize the support offered in school, utilize the support offered by your council, utilize the support offered by your church. Make sure you're supporting your children. Sometimes your children might not want to talk to you, so make sure they have available people that they can share with. And don't forget, you cannot give from an empty vessel. You also need support. So don't be afraid to say to someone, I need help. I need support. Can you help me here? Give me a few days where I can switch off, because parenting is a challenging 100% 24-hour days job. So you want to make sure that you're at the best and the peak performance when you're dealing with your children. So don't be afraid to share and ask for support when you need it. So talks is a very useful strategy that you can use to support your children during the pandemic. I hope you found something useful from my talk this evening, and I would like to say thank you. Back to you, Trudy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have my question as well. What we're going to do is we're going to keep all of our questions towards the end, and then we're just going to have that discussion there. And those of us in the room will then you'll be invited to open our mics and have that discussion with us. And so we're going to move on, and we're going far. You know, we're way ahead of our schedule. Thank you so much, Vinette, for that. As I said, I have my questions, and then we're taking it from there. So I'm going to pick up this leg of the presentation. With looking at children and, you know, how do we take care of them with their mental health. So ECAF runs a course called First Aid for Mental Health, basically. And the idea behind it is that we do what we call this low-level intervention training that is not clinical, so the ordinary person can understand. And it just involves getting the person to understand what mental health is and how to take care of their mental health, but also to spot the signs and symptoms of major mental health conditions and how to give help. So you don't have to think that you need to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. An ordinary parent, you know, a teacher, a foster carer, an aunt, an uncle, grandmother can do this training and be able to understand what it is that is happening. So we're coming from ECAF's end with First Aid for Mental Health and how that helps the child. So with this, what we're looking at is we want to explain what mental health is versus mental health condition versus the term mental illness. Because what we've come to understand is that a lot of people just think when we say mental health, they think mad, and that's furthest from the truth. That's not what's happening at all. It's not just mad. So mental health is your emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It means that you're okay on all these fronts. It affects how we think and feel and how we act, how we determine stressors, how we relate to others. So mental health is a good thing. If I was to say to you physical health, you would think nothing wrong. You think about somebody with an absolutely perfect BMI, good blood pressure, good, glucose, blood sugar levels, stuff like that, perfect body weight. You wouldn't think anything is wrong with them. It's the same thing with the term mental health. And that's what we want parents to understand, because some parents, and especially in some particular communities, when you say mental health, they switch off because they say, you're saying that my child is mad. Quite the opposite. We're here today to ask you kindly and to give you the tips, hints, and strategies to actually take care of this mental health of your child, just as how you take care of the child's physical health. However, we want to highlight mental health condition and mental illness and how the pandemic is possibly affecting that. So when we say mental health condition, we're talking about changes to your emotion and your emotional and psychological and social well-being. We are talking about now like changes to your thoughts and emotions and behaviors and the relationship. And more often this change is negative, but it's short-lived. It's short-lived. And we have natural occurrences where this happens, and these are the things that are happening. And so, like if someone dies, if there was no pandemic and someone dies, a child would grieve, but it's short-lived in some instances. We start talking in layman's term, not in clinician's term. In layman's term, we start saying mental illness when it covers all of this, all of these changes, but now the behaviors, the emotions, the relationship, the thoughts, this is now happening over a long period of time, left unaddressed and unattended and untreated. And that's what we're saying. We're 19 months into a pandemic. If your child has started to have a mental health condition back then and you didn't address it, you didn't treat it, you didn't even pay any attention to it, we're now possibly looking at the child running into mental illness. And this is why we're here. We're saying we don't want you to ignore this. We want you to face it. And Vinette and Trudy have said so many things that it is just not, we can't help now but to pay attention. So there are two things that can happen in this setting for children. So the situations and circumstances within the pandemic have changed quickly since the beginning of the pandemic. First, we knew one thing, then we knew another thing. Now everybody thought things were settling down. Now apparently there's a new variant coming out. Things change so quickly, and it disturbs what we consider as our normal life. So it disturbs our thinking, situations, and emotions. So if as an adult, you're thinking, okay, I could have had Christmas, and then a new variant is out just days before Christmas, it changes, it disturbs your thinking. Can you imagine a child? So there are two things that affect the child during the pandemic. It's internal and external. So the child within the child's self will think. Their emotions, their setting has changed because some children are doing hybrid learning. So if you think about change, it's positive thinking, their positive emotions and their positive social settings have kind of moved to negative ones. And these changes in the emotions and the behaviors of the child can then present. And we're going to look at that in different ways. And then we have the external things affecting the child. A child relies on an adult. The child relies on the adult around them to inform them and make decisions for them. And in a lot of research I've looked at, a lot of the times children don't get help. It's because the adult has made a decision that they don't want this associated with them, and nobody's suffering from mental health condition around your mental illness. And so I'm going to withdraw from this, or I'm not even going to seek this help. So the external factor is that adult. And so if the adult makes decisions, or if the adult isn't informed correctly, or the adult makes decisions that are not well, this will affect the child. And during the pandemic, we've seen lots of adults, beating, killing children. They're now staying at home. We've seen parents walking behind the computer, walking behind the child naked, while the child is in class. These decisions all affect the child. And then we have adults, parents, whether it's parents, carers, teachers, that their own emotions are not stable, their own behaviors are not stable, and they transfer that to the child. So the child is now dealing within the middle of the pandemic, their own internal struggles and external struggles of those who are supposed to know and care for them. And so what this causes, this changes a child's emotions first, and leads into negative emotions and unhelpful thinking. The child, and then this leads to a mental health condition, which if not taken care of can lead to mental illness like stress, anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. We've seen it. So when we say negative emotions, we're talking about anger, resentment, sadness, which is one of the overwhelming things happening. You've got fear and distress. Those are all the negative stuff. It just feels like there is no hope. And so they now start to think, we're all going to die. We're never going to see a future. We're never going to graduate. We're never going to get married and have children. The world is coming to an end. And a lot of the things too are also things that come with when you're talking about the mis and disinformation that is out there. So if they hear the parents saying all of the things that are actually not correct information, then they're going to start repeating that and thinking about it. They will not want to look, and a part of unhelpful thinking is just deciding to, stay it all in your head. It's all in your head. So in the first lockdown in the UK, about 2 or 3 weeks into it, a 16-year-old committed suicide because she said it felt like 300 years. And so she didn't understand that, there are increments to this thing. We're going to get past this stage and we'll move to the next stage and we'll move to the next stage. Her parents probably could not help her with the immediate of this lockdown. You can't see your friends. It was quite disturbing. So make sure, we check, we want to check the thinking. What is our child thinking? What are they feeling and thinking internally? And then check how we're feeling and thinking and how we're passing that on. So here are some of the things that can affect the way we think and feel in real life terms. Not getting to celebrate significant achievements and developmental life milestones. So significant achievements and developmental milestones like graduations, proms, birthday parties. I remember a friend of mine, her sister had COPD, so she had to be in the first lot of isolation. But the sister came out of isolation on her sister's birthday and came to the door with a mask on and brought a bottle of wine and put it down. And her sister was in absolute tears because she was like, oh my goodness. She's like, I can't not celebrate my sister's birthday. This is madness. So we have those things that will start triggering these negative emotions. So they can't go to prom, they can't see their friends anymore, they can't go to school, they don't know when they'll be able to go to school, they don't like sitting at the computer, they like playing video games, but sitting to learn isn't video games. We also have what we call increased screen time. So once their screen time was just video games, but now it's school. Like that's almost like forever in front of the computer. Then you've got the hybrid learning, and some children don't have stable internet, don't have any internet, don't have a good device to use, have no device to use. And that in itself matters. Then you've got the idea of what's your background? Is your parents going to walk naked behind you? Are they going to all be talking in the house while you're trying to learn and they should be quiet? Stuff like that. Then you have a trigger such as not being told or explained to what is happening. So you just see people shuffling around. We've got to hurry up and go buy toilet rolls. We've got to hurry up and buy food and stock up, but the child doesn't know why we're doing all of that. And so it is now causing them to be anxious or nervous. Is it Independence Day? What is it? What are we actually facing? And then we have triggers that the parents face. So the parents actually face triggers, and that trickles down to the child. So that when there's uncertainty or the lack of control, isolation and abuse, trauma, the loss of income, the lack of money, the social disadvantage, homelessness if they can't pay their bills, their rent, their mortgage, feeling stressed, and as I said, abuse before, domestic violence and drug and alcohol misuse, the fear of death and the fear of losing a someone or the fear of catching the virus in this particular case, long-term illnesses while facing the crisis. Some people are ill in the middle of the crisis. You've got some moms who are actually facing cancer, knowing that they're going to die, and then they are in the middle of a pandemic, and then they still have to be a mom. Having to care for someone while facing the crisis, and just overall, if you are struggling from poverty, so who gets to sit around the dining table and use that to do schoolwork as opposed to who has to sit on the couch in with their laptop, or who has to stay in their bedroom, or who doesn't even have a bedroom to stay in. So those are the triggers. It can affect the child's emotions. And we're saying these are the things that have been affecting the child's emotions. Now, if these, can you imagine if the child has been experiencing this for the last 19 months and has not been able to share this with anyone? They're just bottling that in, and they can't share it with anyone whatsoever. Very tragic. Imagine you having all of this. I just want for us to stop for a little while and imagine you feeling all of this and not having anyone to talk to, not knowing if you can talk to them, especially if you're in a household before now, where if you spoke, they go, oh, shut up. We don't want to hear. What are you complaining about? All you do is just have to go to school on the computer. And sometimes, even when there was no pandemic, children are told, all you have to do is just this. While they have real, genuine concerns, nobody's listening to. Can you imagine the pandemic has just multiplied it? So this then leads to behaviors. If we do not deal with it, it's going to lead to behaviors such as aggressiveness, irritability, avoidance, withdrawal, physical complaints. So they'll say, oh, my head's hurting me. Oh, I feel sleepy. They just want to sleep all the time. Or they're having sleep disorder or eating disorder. And then they can have delinquent behavior and poor concentration, to name a few. And where there are cases where, I know there are parts of the world in the States where you can go out and you can go out to the mosque. The minute they can go out, they're just gone. You don't see them until it's time for them to come back in. And so you lose that track of what's happening with them. And then this presents also as stress, anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. So they have these adverse reactions to anything, no matter how small, they just start blowing up. And they're just worried about everything. Worried, am I going to have a future? Worried, am I going to turn into a computer? Because there's mis and disinformation out there, or whatever the information is, even if it is the truth. If nobody explains to them what is happening, and then they're just sad, overwhelming sad, and then the sadness brings no hope. What's the point here? Maybe it is better. This pandemic is going to go on for the rest of our lives. Maybe it's better if I'm not here. I'll be happier if I'm not here. And I just want to stop here and say, when you see your child start sleeping a lot and say things like sleeping causes them to escape and they're a lot better, they feel a lot better when they're sleeping, you might want to start looking at it as a warning sign, because they're trying to find some form of escape. And the child might not go to drug and alcohol or promiscuous sex or even actual suicidal thoughts, but we want to start investigating it. And if they express to you things like, this is not going to end, it's all better that we all die, I want for you to look the child straight in the eye and say, are you thinking of killing yourself? And you are not giving the child the idea. What you want to do is, if they have thought about it, they will be able to tell you no. If they haven't thought about it, and if they have and they're really thinking about it, they would go yes. And the next question you want to ask is, have you thought about when and how? Because if they're able to answer those, they are thinking of killing themselves, and you will need to get intervention straight away. That's not something that you need to play with. You need to call your doctor, your GP, the emergency services, find a psychologist or a counselor, someone to intervene into a clinical professional to intervene into the matter. I don't want, but what we here at ECAF would not wish for a parent to do is to say, oh, are you thinking of killing yourself? No, I wouldn't do that. And then they go, oh, he said or she said she wasn't doing that. Any thought of, I don't want to be here anymore, life will be better without me, needs to be explored. And both presenters earlier said, talk to your child. We can't stress how important it is to talk to your child. Now is not the time for children to be seen and not heard. Some of us on the platform know of that culture that says children must look but don't touch, and seen and not heard. Now is not the time for that. We need to know what's happening. We need to see them. We need to know what they're being involved with. Trudy alluded to the fact that they are on the computer, nobody's watching them, and so they're getting involved in all kinds of things online. We need to know, we need to see. So how do we give help? And that's why we're here. We want to manage the negative emotions and behaviors and unhelpful thinking of our child. And we can do that by talking to them, connecting with them, hearing what they have to say, validating their points. Ensure that you as the adult, one of the other speakers said it, your emotions and behaviors are in check. You're balanced. You just don't get anxious and nervous over everything. So you go to the supermarket and there's no toilet roll. Oh my God, they bought all the toilet roll. Ensure that you're not putting over your fears and enmeshing them on the child. And so you want the child to not say, oh, there's no toilet roll, what's going to happen? No, a child has to be a child. You deal with the fact that there's no toilet roll. Find another store, go to Sainsbury's, go to Tesco's, look for it online. And then another thing you can do is take a mental health awareness course, like the course that we deliver here, First Aid for Mental Health or Family First Aid for Mental Health. And what it does, we take mental health for granted, and everyone thinks they know how to take care of their mental health. And probably everyone does know how to take care of their mental health. But we have found out that when we deliver the course, people go, oh, I didn't realize that physical health is just the same as mental health. I thought mental health was madness. And then they start thinking about the ways that they're actually not helping their mental health, and the ways as a mom or a dad or the family they're actually helping to make another family member's mental health poor. So take these courses. They're short courses. They're half day, 1 day, 2 day courses, so that you can know how to take care of your own mental health, then how to help your child take care of his or her mental health. And with that, you will then be able to spot the signs and symptoms of some major mental health conditions, such as stress, anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts, suicide or self-harm, to be able to give that immediate help and support. So these courses teach you how to have a conversation. If you're struggling to have a conversation, it actually teaches you how to start that conversation, what to say, what to do, where to have it, and then what to look for, and then what help to give if the child says, yes, I'm thinking of harming myself. We want to borrow what the NHS says, is use Connect 5, which is get the child connected. And I tell parents that if they were in school and had a break, they could talk to their friends. Why is it if they're homeschooling? First of all, you need to break up their day if they're doing hybrid learning or just homeschooling. You've got to break up the day like any normal day. And when there's a break, let them FaceTime their friends. Let them have a Zoom party. It is important. And so we want to encourage parents that when connecting, so we want to ask them if they're learning from home or hybrid learning, get them to wake up, have a shower, get out of bed, make the bed. You can't lie around in a bed. It's not possible. Change out of that night clothes, shift the mind. Then basically find an area in the house that's school. And then an area that area is just where you go to school in the house. And break up the day. Have lunch prepared like you would have lunch. If you make lunch packages for them to go off to school, don't have them walking around in the house, opening the fridge 500 million times, slamming the fridge door, I wonder what I'm going to eat, then take up all the crisps or chips or whatever in the house. No, children need a routine, even the teenagers still. And because the pandemic is so out of routine, in order for us to feel some kind of normal, we have to create a new routine for ourselves. So if you were going to make a cheese sandwich for them to take to school normally, if there was school, make the cheese sandwich the night before. When they're homeschooling and they can't just say, oh, I want the overnight chicken, you know, that we had for dinner. No, that's not possible. You know, this is a different day and this is school. This is your school time. I mean, you can be flexible, but try to make as normal as a routine. You're having this cheese sandwich for lunch and then we're having something else for dinner. So their day is, you break the day. Allow them to be active. So if you're in a lockdown, because some people are they're currently in a lockdown state. There are people from different places. Or if you're now able to go out and be free, allow them to be active. So if you're in a lockdown and you only have that 1 hour a day, make them go out, get on their bikes, go to the local court, do something, be active. Get them to keep learning. So learning doesn't mean academic learning. So you might want to know it's a perfect time if they say, I want to learn to make Spanish food and you're not Spanish, look up that recipe. I want to learn how to crochet, look up how to do it. Give to others. And we tell the adults the same thing as well. And so you can encourage your child. So if you are going on a road to help an old person get their grocery, you can take the child with you. They'll start learning how to be nice. If you're doing something like picking up grocery for someone, they can come along and you can share the list with them and say, okay, this is what grandma wants. She wants green beans. Go look on the shelf if you see green beans for grandma. And so they become a part of knowing how to give back and to give help to others. Then we also want you to get them to think, to be mindful. We want every child to be present in the moment where they are at. We don't want them to be worried about yesterday or tomorrow. So we're right here having dinner. We want everybody's mind to be at the table. We want to smell and taste the food. We want to remember the texture and the color and everything. Just be right here. Forget about everything else that's happening. Let's enjoy this moment, because it is this moment that will be a memory to cherish. If we don't cherish this moment and don't teach them how to cherish the moment, they're going to say, oh, we sat around the table yesterday, but what did we eat? I can't remember. Because their mind was somewhere else. So get them to do the Connect 5. Connect, be active, keep learning, give to others, and be mindful. Then we want to move them into positive emotions and helpful thinking. So we want to think about gratitude and joy and love, self-worth. Get them to appreciate what they're doing. So accomplishment or success, they say, is doing a task and setting to do a task and completing the task. And I want you to share that with your children. That's what success is. Success. Sometimes adults think success is a big house and a car, and no, it is just setting a task and completing it. So at the end of today, all of our partners and all of the panelists and ECAF would have done something successful. We wanted to bring to parents the ability for them to be able to know what's affecting their child with their mental health and wellness and how to help during the pandemic. That's just it. So if it was just one person who turned up or 500 people who turn up, it would still be a success, because we would have had an idea to do something, made a plan and did it. And that's what we want you to get in the middle of this pandemic. We want for you to make sure that you ensure that you let your child understand that there are increments to life. So a small success is making a plan, helping mom with dinner. And then they help you with dinner, success. And then we want to bank up those little successes to accomplishments, to appreciation, to self-worth. And then when we want to start doing that, our attitude, our emotions, our thinking would change. We won't start thinking, oh, we're a loser. Because if we start planning make them start planning for their birthday party next year, we don't know what's going to happen. next year. But the small things, the incremental things that are in front of us, and I'm not saying that you can't get children to make long-term plans for, you know, their hopes and aspirations, but we want to do increments of things to keep it manageable, to keep it smart, the smart targets, even for children. Now is when we need to implement that small incremental that they can just be very happy. Today, our trip is to look for grandma, our nana or our granddad. And we went by, we drove by, we rang on the doorbell, we have on our mask, or we social distance in the background, the backyard. Success. High five. Everybody's happy. And then we want to get them into the realm of peace, feeling that sense of peace, because we're now in chaos. We don't want to add to the chaos. We want to get them in that sense of peace. So we want to find all the peaceful things that can possibly happen. We want to keep our home peaceful. And I'm not saying not live in reality, because even if there wasn't a pandemic, we would have some amount of chaos. But the chaos, as Vinette just showed us, is not overwhelming. Even if there wasn't a pandemic, they would have a problem. So we want to be mindful as adults, as parents, as carers, that we need to make an extra effort to bring peace into the child's life. We want inspiration. Give them something to hope for. Give them something to hope for. So you can share stories like there was a pandemic before now and everybody didn't die because we're all here. So they can hope to say, you know, better is coming. And, you know, there's inspiration and there's hope. And then you start getting to do helpful thinking. So now you're moving from the negative, everybody's going to die, it's happening to everyone, to say, no, okay. So we've had cases where people have had COVID and they have survived. So everybody isn't going to die. Everybody isn't going to die as because we have evidence. So we want to put them in that direction. Here's the evidence of these things that are happening. This is how we want to think. We want to hope for the best. We don't want to think everything is just a bad idea. We want to keep positive in our thinking. We want to look at the facts. We want to ask for help. We don't want to say, oh, if we go to social service, they're going to take the kids away, because we just heard, no, that's not true. If it's a low-level intervention and you're doing all that you can do, then they won't. So that's a helpful thinking. I could get some help here because it's consensual. So it's things like that. You know, you want to get them in their frame of mind into helpful thinking. And then as an adult and together as a family, here are some things that you can do. Pray. It is shown in research that faith is helping. Faith helps with mental health and wellness. So we're not just here talking about pulling God from out of the sky and if people are offended. No, because research is now showing that if you're faith-based, it helps. We're not making it up. Research is out there. And now more than ever, clinicians are saying, if you have a faith, if you believe in God, use that when you're as a part of your self-help strategy. And we discuss things like making a new routine to work from home and to have them get schooled from home as well. The same. And here's another thing: if you're here as a parent and a carer, what the old life that we know, it is gone, and so we did and made plans to meet those needs. Now with a pandemic, our needs have changed, and so we have to sit down and think, what has changed, what needs changing. So no, if you're not running to work to 9 to 5 anymore, you might not need to wake up at 4:30. That has changed. So you might not need to keep your alarm for 4:30. Why would you keep your alarm for 4:30 when you no longer have to do that? It's the same thing. Sit in your home and think about it. What has changed? What are the new needs? And how can I meet these new needs? Because we could be, chances are our children are operating with trying to meet the new needs with old ways. And it's not going to happen because it's a new need. So make a new routine for work and home. Learn relaxation techniques like breathing and stretching, not anything untoward. And get the children involved, breathing, stretching, being active. And we said before, Connect 5, learn something new, volunteer. And you as an adult, you can do that with them, make it a family thing. Get them to spend quality time with family and friends. So get them to talk to each other. Maybe now is the time that we ditch the mobile phone and we're at home and play a board game with them, some puzzle. Get them to talk to their grandparents. If they would normally see the grandparents or aunts, video chats, do a drive-by, do a social distance walk, whatever it is, but still keep them connected. If your family is a source of distress, if you know that within the home you and your partner aren't getting on, and then it's becoming toxic, seek help. Because with everybody being at home, or the return to the outside life, it's a bit much on a child to begin with, much as a pandemic. Ensure that the child gets enough sleep. So not because you're at home means that they can just go to bed anytime, wake up anytime. It doesn't work like that. Set bedtime, set a wake up time so that they can get enough sleep. They can't just go to lounge and sleep in the day if there's school going on. Not possible. Exercise, as we said, take them out for that walk, that bicycle ride, whatever mountain hike, whatever it is that you do. Monitor the news that you take in and fact check your information, and monitor the news that they take in as well. Because sometimes they're not always with you. So their friend or their friend parents might tell them something and they might watch something or read something on their phone. So just check that what they have heard, what have you heard today? What have you looked at? So just make sure that you know what's happening in their head, and ask for help, and make sure to communicate that to the child, to tell them that they can ask for help if they're feeling overwhelmed, to not keep it to themselves. And you as an adult have to do the same. Ask for help when you are feeling overwhelmed. It is important. And we've looked at so many places just now, where we can ask for help. Speak to a friend, speak to your doctor, contact your doctor, or any of the helplines available too. So it's not only just asking for help from your mom because you feel overwhelmed. If this is a case where you're concerned, or any form of concern, you can just raise it with your GP, your primary care physician, and say, listen, my friend, due to a family occasion, she couldn't be here today. She is a pediatrician out of Texas. And she said, when we were having this discussion, she said, as a doctor, from a medical perspective, my kids have gained weight. Her children that she was looking after, they've gained weight. They came to her, and the next time she saw them, they were 20, 30 pounds overweight, or they went to a psychiatric ward. And when she asked why, they were just at home eating anything, feeling down. And she said, no, we were pushing here at my practice for children to go back to school, to see their friends, to go back into some kind of routine, because health-wise, it's not happening for them. The physical health-wise, it's not happening for them. So do contact your doctor. Do contact your doctor. Along with the self-help strategies, you at some point will need clinical help. And here is where we're saying contact your doctor. Make sure to talk to the professionals. And with that, that ends ECAF's portion of the presentation. Thank you so much. I am Trudy King. I'm the director here at ECAF, and we just want to encourage you to ensure that your children are okay. It's not too hard to have that conversation, and I know sometimes it might be so hard for you to have that conversation, but we're going to have to make ourselves uncomfortable as adults to be able to meet the needs of our children. They can't meet it for themselves. That's why we're here today. They can't do it. If they could do it, we'd be surprised at some of the things that they would do. So we are the ones who are responsible. They are vulnerable. They can't do some things for themselves. And when you find a society that doesn't take care of our people, who will not take care of their own, they're vulnerable, that's the disabled, children and older people, we have a problem. We will have a problem. And already we know the pandemic is going to run into problems. And so we don't want to add to it. Teacher, parent, carer, foster carer, we don't want to add to it. We want to ensure that we're giving our children the necessary tools that when they come out at the other end of this pandemic, they're ready to go. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're going to save our questions, as I said, towards the end, and we're just going to then have a big panel discussion. So our next speaker is Mrs. Stephanie Grant, and she has worked with young people on a voluntary basis for a number of years. She's a trained counselor. She's taught and mentored and encouraged young people. Her current role is training young leaders. She's an international youth leader for her church, Miracle Church of God in Christ. They're in Bedford, and she helps them to see the potential, to harness and allow them to shine every single thing that's in them. As Vinette has said, she has the future in her hand. She literally has the future in her hands. Though it's not a school setting or a social care setting, it's a different kind of social well-being setting. And she has the future. She helps to add on to what the home, what social services they're interacting, and what the school is doing. So we want to invite Stephanie to come to us, and she is going to be our last presenter. And then we're going to go into our discussion. Stephanie, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me on this panel, Trudy. I've actually been sitting here and really kind of feasting on what the other speakers, including yourself, has been saying. And I'm thinking everybody is kind of picked a little bit out of, what I'm actually doing with our young people. The majority of the young people that I deal with tend to be from the age of 13 plus, but we do have ones that come along with their siblings because if they, normally they're the ones that are sort of looking after a sibling when the parent is working or a parent is out. So we say, right, rather than them miss out on what's happening in the sessions, bring the siblings along with you. And we try, we sort of cater for them as well in what we're doing. Now, during this pandemic, we've seen a lot of cases where young people are just scared. They're scared because something is happening that they don't understand. Something is happening that in some cases it's not explained. The thing for a lot of them is, they've been in school and school is every day. And then next thing they know, there is no school. So what do I do? 9 to 5. I know like with my son is now turned 15 and he was saying, but Mum, I'm getting more work now than I was getting when I was in school. I'm doing much more. But he learned to control his day, so to speak. He spaced out his work, and sometimes he would sort of do some schoolwork in the daytime, have a little break, and maybe do some in the evening as well as if he was doing homework. I've got other youngsters who we were sort of giving them ideas as to how to kind of manage their day, how to manage their time. What we found is we tried not to make things too different for them. We knew, there was so much already going on. So we tried to make it so that they didn't feel that in coming to youth, this was another thing that had changed. So what we did, we weren't in the building, but what we did was we still carried on with our youth sessions. We just shortened them a little because, whereas we would normally have 2 hours on a Friday, 2 hours was a little bit much to sit and, look at a screen. So we would shorten the sessions to an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, depending on how excited they got in the session and how much they wanted to carry on, because we more or less got them to kind of lead as to how long the sessions lasted. We did different things. What we would do is we had one session where we actually had a discussion, because at the time, Black Lives Matter was the main subject of the day. So we actually talked about it. We got them to talk about it. We got them to talk about how they were feeling about it, what happened. We got them to ask questions. We got them to think about it and think, well, what if that was a member of my family? What if that was somebody that I know? But also they looked at it from the race perspective as well. Why do you think it happened? Should it have happened? We know nobody, regardless of race, color, creed, nobody deserves to be killed. But we got them to discuss it, to have an in-depth discussion about it, and also to look at, okay, what the authorities did, how they felt it was handled, what they felt could have been done differently. What we did a lot of the times is we didn't just meet with our youth group. We actually extended it. We extended the invitation. So we had youth groups from other organizations that would join us on a Friday. So sometimes you would have 4 or 5 different youth groups joined together from across the country and sometimes from across the ocean. We've had sessions where we had youth from Jamaica join the session. We had youth from as far as Germany. We had a young lad who was actually doing a bit of worship in Germany in one of the sessions that, you know, that was actually being taken by a group in London, sometimes a group in Birmingham. So we had lots of other youngsters joined us. So they were actually meeting new people as well. Some were people that were used to, some were people they'd never met before. So we were going on Zoom where there was dance going on, there was poetry going on, you know, there was singing, there was all sorts going on there. But because for that little time that they had, it took their mind off whatever else was going on. We did things like we would play games on there, we'd do quizzes on there. I actually learned how to use Kahoot during lockdown. I'd never even heard of it before then. But, you know, we had things like that where they could take part in an interactive quiz session. We had our young people doing blogs. And you know something? We have some talented young people that we really sometimes miss. Because when they were doing their blogs, some of the things that was coming out, and you had, even during the pandemic, a young lady of 13, 14, who did a blog that just had us in stitches. And this was to do with the pandemic. But, you know, she'd written something that really sort of had us laughing, had everybody laughing, which was absolutely brilliant. We had ran a competition, or we took part in a competition, which was about peace. It was actually run by an organization in Luton, but we got all our young people involved. And in fact, it was out of about 4 or 5 prizes, 3 of them went to some of our young people, which was, you know, was just absolutely amazing. There was things that they were doing, like one young lady did a vegetable garden. She'd never done gardening before. But I have like herbs and things in my garden, and I would swap things with her. I'd give her little sprigs of thyme. I would give her some lavender, you know, rosemary. And she was taking photos as she was putting her little garden together. And we were sharing photos amongst the groups as to, oh, what did you know, this bit look like this week? Or what was, you know, what did I do here? And, you know, little videos of what she was actually doing and how she was tending the garden. We had others who were knitting, and they didn't know how to knit before, but during lockdown, they learned how to knit. So, of course, everybody was wearing face masks, and they would actually come, when we started opening back up again, they would come in their face masks that they knitted during lockdown. So there was a lot of new skills that was being learned. Another thing that we actually did was we said, right, being as we can't physically see these youngsters, we actually visited them at home. But what we did, we didn't go inside the house. We'd make up little snack bags, little takeaway bags. So you would put however many children are in the house, you put some crisps in there, you put some sweets in there, you put a drink in there. And also we'd put in there a little card with a bit of encouragement on there, just to remind them that we haven't forgotten about you. You know, we're still here, we're still thinking about you, and, you know, interact in that way. And then we would go to turn up at the front door, put the bag down, ring the bell, you know, and stand across and have a wave, have a quick little chat, and, you know, be off again. During our youth sessions, we normally have a tuck shop, so we'd sort of like, you know, take the tuck shop to them, kind of thing, but just to leave them little presents, you know, of things they could share while we were actually in a Zoom session online. We did a session of baking online. So 1 week we sent out the ingredients to the parents, and we said, right, this week we're going to be baking. This is what you need. So the parents went out with their children. They picked up their ingredients. And again, over Zoom, we did a baking session. We made some biscuits. And we asked them, right, when you have finished your biscuits, when you've taken them out of the oven, make sure you take a picture, or mum takes a picture, send us the picture. because what we were doing was putting together an Instagram page for them, also their Facebook page, and also their web page. So all these things that they were doing and all these pictures that they were sending in, we were actually putting it up on a page so others could see what they were actually doing during that time. There were times when, we'd say to them, invite your friends, because some of their friends don't go to youth club, don't do anything like that. So it was nice for them to actually invite their friends. They came online with us. They enjoyed the time with us. So it was very different, but we tried to make it as interactive as we possibly could, because we have some of our youngsters that even now that we're sort of back out and, we can sort of interact again, they will actually say to us there's certain parts of what we were doing on Zoom that they actually miss, which is, absolutely wonderful. And some of the friends that they actually made and the friends that they were inviting to sessions can still now come out to the sessions with them, which is great. Because we have other groups within Bedford that we've joined with on Zoom, we are now planning that, okay, we can actually go 1 week, visit those groups. Our youth group can go and visit the groups. The other youth groups can come and visit us. So they've made a lot of connections. They've made a lot of new friends within that time. It's not to say that it wasn't difficult for some of them, because we had some of our youngsters who we'd spent time talking to them, encouraging them, and getting them to be brave and bold, but then came lockdown and they kind of regressed, went back into their shells again. So we still had to spend that time getting them again to build up that confidence. But what we would also do is just give them a phone call to ask, how are you feeling? And get them to sort of talk it through. Because although, some of them, they've got two parents at home and so on, it's just nice to have just somebody else, because if you're stuck at home with your parents all the time, it's just nice to hear another voice. It's just nice to have another person who, paying you a bit of attention. So we would make the calls. We sort of split the group up, divided it amongst us, and each of us had a certain amount of people. And each week it was our duty to ring those people, have a little chat with them, see whether they needed anything, see how they were getting on, get them to actually talk about the situation, what is happening. So they weren't, just left to get on with it. We used to do sessions on fear. That was one of the things, because we thought, they're fearful. They don't know what's going on. Some had an understanding, but there were others that, okay, I'm used to going out. I'm used to doing things. And now I can't go too near my front door, because, they've said I've got to be at home. I can't go to the supermarket with mum. I can't do a lot of things. So for them, it was nice to know that, yes, there is still a world out there. Yes, we are still here connecting with you, and we haven't forgotten you, because that was the main thing that we had to keep them, keep getting them into them. We haven't forgotten you. We're still here for you. If you need anything, we are here for you. Hence the dropping the little bags and things, so that at least they know that, okay, maybe you're not going to ask, but we're going to bring something anyway. Yeah. To just to encourage you that if you need, you need to ask. So there was all those things that we were doing with them. And as I was saying, we had we'd have little sessions where we would meet up with them each week. The first thing we would do is ask them, how are you feeling? Is there anything that you want to talk about? And if everybody sat there silent, we'd drop little nuggets in of things that we felt that they needed to talk about. We did a session with them on fear. And, we were talking to them about how, the scripture says God didn't give us the spirit of fear, but he gave us the spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. Then you have to break that down into what is happening now. how can you not fear? Well, you don't need to fear because you believe in somebody. You don't need to fear because that person has told you that he's looking after you. And you have to trust and you have to believe that he's looking after you. Yeah. So you have to reassure them that the things that you've been talking about in Sunday school, the things that you've been, hearing when you come into the building, nothing has changed in that respect. The good thing was we were still doing Sunday school on Zoom. And would you believe our Sunday school grew at least 40% during lockdown. There was more youngsters coming onto Zoom Sunday school. And what you also had was the parents, even if they weren't coming to church, they would join their youngsters on Zoom Sunday school. And it was actually really refreshing listening to a parent actually talking to the parent who doesn't come to church, but they're on Zoom Sunday school, and they're actually helping you to explain to the child. And it was absolutely wonderful. So you weren't just teaching the child, but you were teaching the parent as well. And I mean, I was helping with a Sunday school class that was like young teenage boys. And it was just so lovely. It was just so lovely because they would be so excited when they come on a Sunday morning, and they'd be like, "Good morning, miss. Are you ready for Sunday?" "Yes, miss." And and then you hear the parents in the background. "Come on, you need to get on here. You need to get on." So we had that encouragement as well from the parents, and it was lovely. It really was. So for us, it was exciting because there are times when you're doing things and you kind of think, am I really kind of making any headway here? Am I really kind of being effective here? But in that situation, you've actually realized how effective you are being because the children were still enthusiastic. They were excited, and it was just lovely. It really was. So in some cases, yes, with the mental health side, there was downsides. I'm also a foster carer, so I'm not just a youth worker. And I see that, the children that sort of passes through my home sometimes and the state that they come in. And I try to take their minds off their situation. I encourage them that, okay, it may not seem that your mum wants you, but that's just how it looks on the outside. But I still encourage them that regardless of how it looks, your mum loves you. Mum can't not love you. Yeah. And this is just a situation that is happening now. But trust that things are going to change. Believe that things are going to change. Because as a foster carer, you're not allowed to push religion on, but there are ways of helping youngsters to be calm. There are ways of helping them to have hope without pushing religion on them. Yeah. And it's really kind of strange because when my son was about 13, he used to say to me, "Mom, I want to go in foster care." And I used to say to him, "Listen, you may see the children that come into our home be treated so nice, but that's not always the case. So no, you don't want to go into foster care. You want to make them feel, welcome. You want to give them that that sense of belonging. You want to help them to understand that there is somebody who cares for them. There is better out there for them." And I'm a foster mother, but my children they foster the children that come. They take them in, they treat them as their own, they treat them like family. And in fact, when we go out, we don't say, "Oh, this is so-and-so, he's a foster child." We say, "Oh, this is so-and-so, they're a friend. They're a friend of the family." So they don't feel that they stand out, to the other children. But going back to the side of, the, say, youth work side, it's been a journey. And it's still a journey because at the moment, we're still not sure whether we're going to go into another lockdown. We're still not sure what is happening. I don't know quite what's happening in the US, and I know Jamaica is still on lockdown. But in the UK, we're back in schools, we're out. but you still have to be careful. So you still have to continue to reassure these youngsters that even though we're out and we're back together, we can mingle again, we still have to be careful. But it's getting them to exercise what they have learned over the months coming to youth group, what they've learned over the months, over the years in Sunday school, that yes, God cares for you. He's not going to let anything bad happen to you. And yes, there may have been, you may have known of families who have lost loved ones, but be reassured that he's still there. He's still God. He's still looking after us. He still cares for us, and whatever we do, he will always find somebody to come alongside us, to encourage us, to strengthen us, to guide us. And it's that giving them the time that they need to speak if they want to speak, to be silent if they want to be silent. But as has been said before, you need to understand their silence. You need to be able to read into that silence and see whether it's silence that needs to be broken, or maybe it's just silence that sometimes needs to be encouraged. Because if it's silence that needs to be broken because you don't know what they're thinking and what's going on behind the thoughts and things, you've got to do something there. But sometimes that silence is just them thinking about what they've been taught, how they've been taught to handle the situation. Yeah, because we actually had some of them sort of saying, oh, Sister Stephanie, can we do this? Oh, what about that? And it gave us that time when we could actually see more of what they can actually do, bring out their strengths a bit more, encourage the strengths a bit more, and also to get these youngsters to know that actually I can do this, I can handle this. Yeah. Because sometimes youngsters really kind of feel that, oh, I can't do it. Oh, I don't know. Oh, and I'm one of these people. I always say to my children, and I say to any young person, even adult that I meet, whenever they say to me, oh, I can't do this, I'll say to them, you know what? There's no such word as can't. That word doesn't exist. And then there's I cannot know. I don't mean for you to change it. I mean for you to understand there is no such word as can't, because even if you can't do the bigger thing, you can do the smaller thing. But there is something that you can do, because every single one of us has a gift. Every single one of us has a talent, or in some cases have many talents. But when you start using that one talent or that one gift, then realize it's going to grow, and it's going to grow, and the more you use it is the more it's going to grow. So it was a time of really sort of being behind them, pushing them, encouraging them, and getting them to understand that regardless of what is going on, that they are special. Regardless of what is going on, that they can move mountains in their own little ways. They can move mountains. Because as I said, we saw poetry, we saw short stories, we saw blogs, we saw things that we were kind of like, wow, yeah. But had they not been given that opportunity, we would not have seen. And maybe had lockdown not happened, we would not have seen some of those things. And it just goes to show sometimes that when you're backed into a corner, you can really come out fighting and you will really push. But we still have to look for the ones who are not pushing so much, and try and tease them out and try and encourage them out, and and get them to be the best that they can be, because they all have it in them. And for me, working with young people over this pandemic has actually been wonderful. It's been absolutely wonderful, because I say to them, listen, at my age, I'm not a youth worker. I've not come to be a youth worker. I am here to encourage you. I'm here to train you, because there are leaders amongst you, but you may not see that for yourself, but there is a leader in you, and it's getting them to acknowledge that leader that they are, And it's getting them to also acknowledge what they have in them, and for you to actually start to tease it until it, till it comes to the forefront. But thank you very much for the opportunity of, joining this panel this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you. We enjoyed that. And I like the fact that you said, you taught them that God has not given them the spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. Because I did have a question for you, but I'm going to hold. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. And I just want to ask everybody who is in the Zoom room, or if you're watching on YouTube, then you can just put your questions in and we're going to put them now. So I'm going to start with mine. That's okay. And feel free just to raise your hand if you want to ask a question. So my question is to Trudy. I've got a question for every single person though. You mentioned that, because I'm just thinking like some of the parents who've heard, but they might not want to ask these questions. So you mentioned that low-level intervention is consensual. And I know the fear people have with social services that once their name gets to social service, it's something bad. How do we get past this? Will my name be bad, and will my name now be in social service, and will I come up everywhere if I ask for help? It's low level and it's consensual. Will I now be blacklisted, red listed, blackballed? Would I always be checked on for the rest of my life?
No, definitely not. And we love parents who ask for support, because it also makes the job easier for all of us. If you say a school has made a referral, or GP or health, we will speak with you about the issues that they have raised. Say they're saying, Mum has come to me and said she's struggling with her mental health. She's not able to take the children to school, or she's feeling overwhelmed. Already we know that mum or dad is seeking support, which is really good. When we speak to a parent, we say, we know that you have been to the GP because this has come from the GP. What else do you want? What else is going on? So it's about understanding what else is going on. Sometimes there is already a family support worker from the school who is working with mum or dad, and they say, actually, I've got a very good relationship with the school. We are doing A, B, C, D. My child is meeting with somebody on a weekly basis, and for now, I think that is enough. Sometimes they would say, I'm actually happy for you to speak with school, which we will then do just to say, continue doing what you are doing. We are happy to leave things as that, because there is already support in place and there is no need for somebody else to get involved. Because personally, I believe that I would rather maintain a relationship, a good working relationship that is there already, than try and force something that might not actually work. So no, you will not be blacklisted. We will be happy that you are already receiving support, and it is consent-based. The only time that we would become, or I would become, worried as a social worker is there are a lot of things going on. There has been support in place, which as a family, as mum, dad, or whoever the adult is not engaging with. But things are not getting better. The children's needs are not being met. There are worries on a daily basis. Children are talking to adults about the things that they are worried about. And we then have a conversation with you to say, actually, look, we've had this come through. You said you are doing A, B, C, D. It appears that things haven't happened. We've spoken with school. We've spoken with the midwife, with the health visitor, and they said that you are not working with them. My worry now is things are not going to get better because you are still not working. But if as a parent, as mum and dad, you decide, actually, we still want to try, we'll say, fine, we'll have another conversation with the people that are supporting you and see if they can put a plan in place so that everything is brought together and everyone is clear who is doing what. Try it and see if it works. If it doesn't work, mainly because a parent is not engaging, then I would be worried if I receive another referral. At that point, I would say, actually, we had a lot of conversations in the past. We wanted things to be at this stage. Will you consent to an assessment? Because it's still consent-based. Some parents would say, actually, yes, I would want an assessment. Others would say, no, I don't want an assessment. I then have to use my professional judgment and apply threshold. And at times I will have to say, I have to override your consent. And I'm saying we need to assess and understand what's going on. We need to hear the voice of the child from a social care point of view. But you will not be blacklisted, because all we want is for things not to go worse than they already are. We want all of you to be happy. We want your children to be happy. We don't want your children to feel out of place, because children do, when things are not working well at home, children will feel out of place because other children are also seeing that. And unfortunately, at times, some children can be mean and they point out the things that are not working well. But we don't want that. We want all the children to feel wanted, loved, protected, and to feel safe.
Thank you. Thank you. That's interesting. So there you have it. You can contact social service for help. They're not going to suddenly send the police around to your house and bundle up your children and take them away. We're trying to take care of our children in the middle of a pandemic. So we're pulling on all the possible resources. Thank you so much, Trudy. Vinette, I'm over to you. And what I want to ask you, because you're in the school system, so these are fielded questions from individuals who wouldn't normally feel brave enough. How do you help a parent who the child is now disengaged with learning? They go to online class, but they can't seem to gather their thoughts to go back into the classroom. They've returned to school, or some people are doing online schooling still, but the child is just not the same in terms of the drive to learn. How do we help such a child?
I think one of the main challenges we have is not focusing on attainment at the moment, is that transition, because even though it sounds like an easy thing, going online, coming offline, going online, coming offline, you have to appreciate the fact that some people have a transition period, and that transition period might be different for different individuals. Now, I'm aware that people are on the call from different countries, but speaking specifically from the UK, one of the things that the government has done is allocate what we call catch-up funding, and that is primarily targeting these kids just to help them with the transition back into the classroom and making sure they are working to their full optimum performance. The school I'm at as well has focus on the whole child, so there are content reduction in terms of what we do teach them in a lesson. We have facilities like homework online platform. We have opportunities for a well-being room where they can actually liaise with people. We have a counselor in school just to talk to the kids on a daily basis. And it's people are volunteering in terms of whether or not they want to go there and want to have a chat. But I think from our part as adults, at the moment, what we're looking at is being flexible. So we appreciate the fact that we are teaching a class of 30 kids, but we're looking at 30 different individuals who have gone through things, even though it's similar, may have reacted or responded differently to the same circumstance. And even though it is challenging from our perspective, it is one of the things that we need to do, is to make sure, recognize each person, recognize and value their process and how they're actually dealing with it and getting through it the best that they can. So for the past week, for the past year, what we have done is set up a mental health program so kids can follow that. So we have students who are taken out of lesson and making sure they're following prescribed route in terms of how to actually build their resilience and get back into the classroom. We have ramped up our mentoring program. So we do have mentoring from a wide cross-section of people. We have from the wider community, we have members of staff, we even have peer mentors. because quite often students tend to talk to students a little bit different than they talk to adults. So we have that in place. We also have regular parents meeting. So we do have those parents meeting a little bit more frequently, just trying to gauge what is happening at home or what is happening at school, just to make sure we're supporting our kids and they're not falling through the gap. So we have put a lot of strategies in place to make sure our kids can actually transition. In terms of content, we have actually preached more than anything else to tell the kids that their well-being matter first of all, their mental health matter first of all, and then we can deal with content. Kids are very resilient. As much as we like to bash them and say that they're this, they're that, they are extremely resilient and they're extremely adaptable. And I think what they need more than anything else is to know that there are people in place to support them, to guide them, and these people are reliable. So they know that if they come on Monday to see me, I'm not going to disappear next week. I'm going to be there. So I'm kind of somebody who's there for them, so they can establish this routine and take their time and build it back into a normal routine. Now, as Stephanie alluded to it, and Trudy spoke extensively on it, we are still not out of the woods. We have absolutely no idea what is going to happen. So it places in a difficult position to actually give them guidance, because with kids, as you know, you have to tell them the truth and guide them through, because they don't want you to tell them it's going to be okay. You're not going into a lockdown and tomorrow there's a lockdown. That actually just erodes the trust that they have established. So you want to be honest and open with them. Just remind them that you're here and there are people there to support them as they go through, but also be equally honest with them to tell them we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what is going to happen next year. But if you're okay mentally, and if you're okay in all of the aspects emotionally, then you can meet any challenge that life will throw at you. So I think that has to be the focus, and that is what we have been focused on in our schools.
Sounds good. So a parent doesn't have to worry that their child might not make it to college in 2025, get those grades to get into university just yet. We're focusing on just getting our mental, because what's the point in getting grades and then you're shattered mentally by the time you get to 2025? The focus is just on ensuring that the mental well-being of your child, and once that happens, they can attain, they will catch up. As you said, they're resilient, they can bounce back, they'll catch up better than we possibly think. So we want to, if you're that parent, just know that you don't have to worry about that right now. That's not something to worry about. Thank you so much, Vinette. And our question, if you have any question and you're in the Zoom room, just type them in the chat, because then we're just going to wrap up after this final question. So it is to Stephanie. How have you handled, because the pandemic felt like the end of the world, let's be honest. It felt like the end. I don't know. It felt like the end of the world was coming. And so there's always, with this sense of uncertainty and so much death and destruction, how, in the faith-based community, would a loving God allow this to happen? How were you able to manage the faith of these children with the uncertainty and with the fear? Well, you said about the fear factor, you manage that. But then the concept of this loving God continuing to hold them, to give them that reassurance, and it's juxtaposed to that level of just we don't know, just death and destruction.
Well, as Vinette says, with children, you have to be honest with them. Yeah, so you can't tell them something is going to happen that you don't even know yourself if it's going to happen. But it's reassuring them that you are there for them. Yeah, it's reassuring them that your parents are there. They're not going to let anything happen to you that they can control. Yeah, they are there. They will, talk to them. And it's trying to get them to understand, talk. Yeah, don't hold things in. And if you feel that there's something you can't say to them, come and talk to us. Yeah, talk to any one of us, because we have all the leaders there. And sometimes there's one leader that they may feel they can open up a little bit more to than another. So it's not a case of, well, you have to talk to me because I'm at the head and so on. It's whichever leader you feel you're comfortable to talk to them. If there's something you're worrying about, talk to us about it. Yeah, because we can only tell them what we know. Yes, there's a lockdown going on. No, we don't know when we're going to be fully out of it. But as we've said to you, as your parents have said, there is a God. He's looking after you. is watching over you, is providing for you. Who knows? It might be that it's one of us. We don't know. But it doesn't change anything. There's still a God, and he's still hearing us. We can still talk to him. He will listen. Even when a human being, you feel that the humans are not listening anymore, he will listen. And if you actually listen enough, you will actually hear something from him. Because I think sometimes that's the bit that you really have to get home to people. That, yeah, you can talk to God till the cows come home. But sometimes you have to stop and you have to listen. But we explain to them that it's not just a case of, okay, you're going to sit and you're going to listen and then you're going to hear God talking. But there are ways in which he talks to you. Yeah. And it could be that mom will come and say something, or dad will come and you'll think, oh, how did they know I was thinking that? Yeah. So it is explaining to them how they listen and how they actually hear when they're listening. Yeah. But it's that reassurance for them not to feel that they're alone. That was the main part of it. You're not on your own. There are so many people out there dealing with this. Everybody deals with it in a different way. Some days you might want to scream away. Yeah. Don't hold it in. Let things out. But it's just the way, teaching them ways of how to let things out. And I would always say to them, make sure you have a pen and paper. Even if you're going out, have a pen and a notepad with you. Because when things come to mind, write it down. When things happen, write it down. Yeah, because that's another way as well, if you're feeling stressed, is to deal with that stress. Write it down. Get it out of your system. You're on mute.
Thank you so much. Last call for any more questions. If not, we're going to wrap up. We see Misha saying, Steph, you're preaching. Love it. Loving it. We see Anne-Marie saying, let's get to Anne-Marie's comment. She's saying, thank you all for a very informative session. There's so much in taking away from today. Hope we'll do this again. This information session is very relevant and current and needs to be in the hands of all parents. We're live on YouTube, and so it will stay there. You can share it with a friend. We'll be sending it out to those who have signed up via Eventbrite. We have Trudy, go ahead. You can jump in.
Yeah, just for the parents that are not aware of ECAF or just coming in contact with you today, how do they self-refer? Are there other organizations that can refer to ECAF? And also from a low-level support point of view, this is I feel this is something that can be actually attached to local authorities, schools, health visitors, school nurses, and all of that, to say, if this comes through, how do we signpost to ECAF? And I think parents might want to know, and professionals as well.
So ECAF, you can email us at info@ecaf.com or training@ecaf.com, and that's ECAF.com. Because so what we do here at ECAF is we provide these low-level training. We do 9 courses. We do a family relationship course. We do a parenting course. We do first aid for mental health that has 3 levels. And children as young as 14 can take our first aid for mental health course. We also have a mentoring course. We do family relationship, parenting, first aid for mental health. We do family first aid for mental health, which is important because then in that course, we teach the family to come together to see how they affect their behaviors, the actions, emotions, how that impacts on someone else's mental health in the family. So what the end result, will it be good? Will it be bad? We do a course called Set for Success. So it helps the parents to gather themselves, manage the money, manage their emotions, manage everything around them to be better able to get ready to go back into work or to even take on being a new parent. And then when the parent is balanced, then they can better look after their family. And then we do a range of course that's just a bit off, that we go out into business enterprise. So for the professionals, we do stuff like customer service, and because customer first service, people always think about the storefront, but actually it isn't. So like yourself, you're still offering customer service to parents who you're interacting with, but the main ones for families are the parenting, the family relationship, the first aid for mental health, the family first aid for mental health, and get set for success. Those are the key ones for family, and they just have to contact us. And we have links with yourself and like Vinette, where we then can say what's the best way forward, refer to your GP, and they can speak to their GP. We are hoping in the future that these services will be there as a part of an everyday service that the GP can say, you go on, contact them. We've had an adult social care environment contact us so that the client can actually come on a first aid for mental health course to learn how to take care of their mental health, the client itself, not the staff, the client. So that's how we work with the system. We're quite easy. Social care can call us, the school can call us and say, hey, we would like to train our staff, train our students, train these parents. Can we put them onto a course? Majority of our courses will be on Eventbrite. We've just finished with our last set of half-day course on Eventbrite, so we make it easier. We're going to put up our courses for the next 3 months, so people can just go and book on a course, or we come into them as an organization. So we've got lots of ways that we work with organizations and individuals out there in society. And that's why we do it, is because we realize that there's a gap. There's a gap between the professionals and then the real people, the people who they're serving. And there shouldn't be a gap, because the people, what we like to call real people, and the professionals are one and the same. And so, and especially, I just want to point out, in some communities, they will not believe some people, especially if the person doesn't look like them. They're more likely to want. So if you are the authority and you look a little bit like them, they're more trusting. And so we've had parents where we've had to say, no, your child has a learning difficulty. And she goes, oh, the school told me, but I didn't believe them. But actually, the school was right. And so not until we presented it to her did she realize that actually this is a problem. And we said, okay, we'll come to school with you and talk to the school, because she thought they were just picking on her child. We're like, no, they're not picking on your child. There's a problem here, and we will come and help. So that's how ECAF helps with it. So I hope that answered the question, Trudy. If that's yes. Okay. So does anyone, Vinette, Stephanie, you've had any last things before we go? There are no questions from the audience. So I think I just want to thank you on behalf of myself and everyone at ECAF. Thank you, Trudy Mukuhlani, Mrs. Vinette Hoffman-Jackson, Mrs. Stephanie Grant. Thank you so much for coming. I am Trudy King. I am the director here at ECAF. And on behalf of all of us, thank you so much. It was a very informative session, even for myself. We've got one last chat, I think. And then we're going to, here it says, Misha said here in the US, we have the mental health services, but unfortunately, the parents don't have time to use the services due to their busy lives. Yes. And that is why ECAF does what we do. We are formed to ensure that even if you're the busiest life of a person, of a parent, we cut it and scale it down to you. And we are now online. We're now online. We are actually even going to be doing stuff where you can now in the future workings take our course without having to sit in a Zoom room. You can just come in, log in, do your bit, log out, and get it done, because we do understand that, if you're a parent and you really have to meet that need, you might not have the time. But what we don't want is for busy parents who are trying to meet needs to neglect the children in a way where their mental health deteriorates. And so we want to leave today's setting saying, please, please, please do take care of your mental health as the parent, and ensure that you're taking care of your children's mental health, because mental health is the same as physical health. And if we're going to be watching our blood sugar and our blood pressure, we should also be watching for stress, anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts or self-harm for our children. So I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for everybody on YouTube and in the Zoom room. Thank you, and good evening, good afternoon, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.